A warm welcome, everyone, and thank you very much for joining today's live session, which is called Inside SAP, how we run SAP Business Technology Platform at scale. So as expert for today's session, I am very happy to be joined by Alexandra Hofmann, who is a cloud architect in SAP's own IT organization. So as a technical expert, she supports internal development units in their cloud journey through technology guidance, consulting, and enablement. So you, the participants, can feel free to address your questions by using the chat window, and we will answer them right after the presentation part. So without any further ado, I would like to hand over to today's expert. And Alexandra, the stage is all yours.
Thank you for the nice introduction. You might do your first steps with the SAP Business Technology Platform or use it already for a couple of years. So in the next minutes, I will share our SAP runs SAP experiences of the last 10 years successfully running our SAP BTP landscape. I will share how we grew our setup as SAP IT and how we scaled in various dimensions to, on the one hand, optimize our overall operations, and on the other hand, to increase our developer efficiency and to accelerate innovation as a large-scale enterprise. I will share how I believe there will be learnings for every one of you so that you in your company do not have to reinvent the wheel, and you can learn from our experiences and insights and adapt them to your needs. So to get started, let's have a look at the numbers of how much we grew in the last 10 years. 10 years ago, we started our SAP Business Technology Platform journey with a three-tier setup, which means we have a development, a test, and a production account. By now, we have more than 130 sub-accounts active in our landscape. On these sub-accounts, we are running hundreds of applications. They are smaller and bigger ones, covering different use cases and scenarios. These applications have been developed by over 1,000 developers on our sub-account landscape. And as mentioned in the introduction, my name is Alexandra Hofmann. I'm a cloud solution architect, and I'm one of the team members in our Platform Center of Excellence within our SAP IT organization. We, as Platform Center of Excellence, are operating our SAP Cloud landscape for internal applications, and we are the team driving these innovations behind that. So based on the numbers that you can see here, you can imagine how we as a team grew in the last 10 years, but also the number of applications and developers grew a lot. During this journey, we experienced very much, and today I want to share with you some insights and learnings in which you might leverage of your individual journey with the SAP Business Technology Platform. So you can imagine in the beginning when we started with the SAP Business Technology Platform, we developed in quite small teams. We did not have many members within our team, and we had still a good overview of what we do, what applications we created, and who is doing what. But with the increased numbers, especially having more people and developers developing on our landscape, we saw the need to provide more guidance and structure around that. We still wanted to keep a holistic overview of what we have, what we offer, and also with getting more developers, we wanted to increase developer efficiency and in general scale our setup over time. Therefore, we will now have a look into 4 different dimensions which we focused on during the scaling. Especially, we will have a look at governance, operations, application development, and the area of agility and innovation. We will always look now at these dimensions with the focus to keep growing by keeping costs, resources, and maintenance to a minimum. So let's have a look at the topic of governance. For me personally, cloud application development is always a constant balance between, on the one hand, driving innovation using latest technologies, but on the other side, ensuring business continuity and fulfilling compliance and legal restrictions. So it's very important to have guidelines in place which are easy to follow by the people and developers and the project teams, so that you can make clear that there are boundary conditions and you have to adhere to the governance processes. Therefore, we have established certain rule sets. For example, before moving with an application to test or production, you have to go through a review process of the application architecture so that we can ensure that it's compliant and secure. As I mentioned, with a couple of projects in the beginning, it's still easy to have a good overview about everything. But remember the numbers that I showed and how much we increased over time. So who would be able to know all the people for a project and who's really in charge of them? Therefore, another aspect we highly recommend is to have a central project inventory. It doesn't matter whether you keep the information in a document or in an own application, but having a central place where all meta information about projects resides, you know where the source code is, and you can also offer additional services to the project will help you a lot. So here we have one central project inventory, which is our single source of truth for all projects and knowing all the responsible people for it. At the beginning of our cloud journey, I mentioned that we started with 3 sub-accounts, which is what we recommend to start in the beginning, because you can easily run a number of applications on one single account and having a development, test, and production environment. But of course, this comes with drawbacks. If you have a lot of developers, you have different areas which want to develop. For example, regarding access rights. You have to think about who should be allowed to change settings on an account, who can adapt configurations, who do I want to allow to make specific changes to application on the environment. So therefore, we decided to go with a scalable account model. With growing in size, we thought about how we can best optimize this. And by now, we divide our landscape per so-called business capability, which means each business capability has its own 3-tier landscape, and all accounts are set up in the same way. Of course, there are also potential other ways in which you can divide it, for example, per subsidiary, if you're more location-based within your company. The important part is to really have a logical structure in place, which makes sense on how you want to divide it, and that you can really still scale in the future. But the governance does not help on its own. Having regulations in place and how you should design everything is important, but the best you can do is making it as possible for anybody to fulfill these rule sets. Therefore, scaling operations comes into play. Operations means we have running applications and we want to keep them going. So somehow we have to enable the people to ensure that. We started by ourselves with a centralized service catalog offering. In the service catalog, we outsource repetitive tasks into service offerings. So this means that a developer can go there, check which offerings are there, and can request them. But this does not only support our developers by knowing what they can request, but it also ensures that the processes are followed, which we have defined in our governance concept. So we can ensure that all services are provided in the same way, and not like if anybody else is working on them, that they do it in any other way. Our service catalog, for example, lists how to get access to a specific sub-account, or if you want to set up a new subscription, and also various other services. Behind that is a well-defined ticket process, which developers or also account owners can follow. They can request those services, and then there's an approval process behind it, and everything gets arranged depending on the request. We can also bring that to the next level and automate some repetitive tasks. So in some cases, we write our own scripts to provide simple automations and also to reduce manual efforts. This can, for example, also be done with SAP Build Process Automation or other toolings. One specific thing which I want to mention when we talk about automations is the creation and maintenance of our account landscape. You might wonder what infrastructure as code is. You might have heard of the word yet or not. So infrastructure as code allows us to declare in a programmatic way how our account landscape should look like, and it ensures a stable configuration at any point in time. This is based on what we've defined in configuration files. So we just mentioned how we want our account setup to look like, and then there's a specific provider behind that who takes over this configuration and adapts the environment. This enables us to have the same setup on all of our accounts. If you remember, we have now more than 100 accounts, so somehow we, of course, have to manage them. For example, if you want to add an additional administrator to all of the sub-accounts, you would need to go in there in each of them and add that person. What we can do with infrastructure as code, we just update our configuration files, and the provider takes over the activity of assigning the people. This does not only help us in setting up everything, but it also reduces human errors in the process. In addition, we provide self-services for our developers to reduce potential waiting times, for example. So this is applied in cases where no interaction from us is necessary. For example, we can skip approval flows or any manual checks and directly provide the service to the requesters. You can think of a scenario if an application wants to make use of one of our application services, they can easily integrate them via our central project inventory. They have a functionality in there and they can just make use of it by themselves and they don't have to interact with us in that case. SAP BTP in general is giving us a variety of tools and services that support us in managing our landscape, and in addition, simplifying application monitoring and operations. So, for example, there's also the SAP Alert Notification Service, which notifies us whenever the CPU of an application is running high. There is a solution called Application Autoscaler, which scales our application depending on how high the usage is. And there's also a list of various more operational services which are available, and you can just check them out on the SAP BTP. These operational services can help us scaling in the area of applications and monitoring. But in addition to the governance that we've built around our landscape offering that we now saw, and the operational part, we also have a third dimension. And in this third dimension, we try to support our developers in their application development. You might have wondered in the beginning, when I talked about the numbers, how many applications we are actually running on our landscape. So these are not only all of them huge business solutions, but they are also smaller applications which support our employees in their daily work. But no matter if we have big solutions or small applications, for us as Platform Center of Excellence, it's important that we have a guided enablement that we can provide to the developers for a good developer experience. So what we want to ensure is also that we can scale this when new people are onboarded. So it already starts with the development. We provide enablement via trainings to our developers and onboarding possibilities so that they can learn the right technology patterns and how to best build secure and compliant applications. How we do that is that we also provide best practice architectures and patterns, and the people and developers, they can just start off with what we recommend and what we already provide to them and use this as a basis to develop their own applications. If we look nowadays at development environments which are coming up, there's a lot going on in the direction of low-code offerings. So you might have heard that SAP offers SAP Build solutions, which are tailored for low and pro-code development. So here we try to foster innovation as soon as possible and provide these offerings to our developers and build a governance model around it so that our developers can benefit most from it. Also in the area of AI, we try to provide services as soon as possible as they are offered so that the developers can make use of it in their own applications. In addition, we also have different tools and services that we provide to our colleagues. So it's not only having a central project inventory, but we have various offerings where they can just integrate central services within their own applications. For a lot of people that we have, cloud application development is quite new. And therefore, in addition to the offerings I already mentioned, we also support project teams in their journey with ad hoc questions by providing individual consulting hours. So there they can book a consulting hour with a topic expert from our team, and we can guide them in their journey and with their questions. So last but not least, one important thing while scaling and focusing on building a structure in our whole setup was always that we never lose our innovation and drive. We still wanted to work in an agile setup in an adaptive environment to ensure that we can always improve. So if we look at the typical application lifecycle, we can keep our mindset that we have with single applications and scale this for business solutions and products to a large scale. So when we think about planning, which is like the first phase that we have in an application lifecycle, we already sit together and plan ahead with multiple teams in our area for the next quarter to define what we want to achieve and where we are heading with our solutions and offerings. During the design, develop, testing phase, we look at the dependencies to other teams, to standard teams, checking within all the teams if we have any dependencies, if we can resolve them, how we can best work together, and we check on what brings overall value to our customers. In addition, we support early innovations and simple access. For example, as I mentioned before with the SAP Build Solutions, we already tried to provide testing opportunities on testing landscapes so that everybody is able to access them as early as possible. Then there's a review phase where we iterate on what went well, what didn't work well. So every 3 months, like a standard product team, we invite all our stakeholders and present what we have achieved in the last quarter. So this is an open session for anybody who's interested. They can just join it, and we reiterate or rethink on what we develop and check what can be adapted there. And also during and after launching our offerings, we always seek for feedback and improvements to make sure that we adapt and check back on what has been done and how we can improve for our customers. So that it's not only about the ideas that we have, how we can scale everything, but really involving all of our stakeholders and taking them with us on this journey. All in all, after having a look now at the different dimensions that I shared in the area of governance, operations, application development, as well as agility and innovation, you've seen that there's a lot that can be done to scale, but that there's not one fixed solution or one way that you have to follow. So what are my 3 key takeaways for you and what we ourselves learned in the last 10 years of running the SAP Business Technology Platform is that really having one central team of experts in place is the most important thing. Having these experts which are passionate about driving the organization, bringing it one step further, but also defining a fixed rule set to achieve governance on compliance is one central factor that should be considered. In order to scale on top, we need employees and colleagues as a support which adapt our guidelines and drive forward our vision within their teams. Of course, a centralized team is important, but it doesn't work if you don't scale it on a bigger level. So we see a short-term invest with a high payout and return of investment if we involve other teams and engage them with our solutions. For example, how we do that is by providing trainings and onboarding to our colleagues, which then spread the word and serve as multipliers in their areas and teams. And last but not least, what I mentioned a couple of times in the different dimensions in order to truly scale, we have to step away from manual processes and invest in automations. So these can have different use cases and scenarios. For example, as I shared, you can provide self-services, you can configure your landscape setup via code in a programmatic way. But for sure, you can also have a look at the various SAP BTP services that are available, which help and support you to automate your processes. So overall, these are the 3 key takeaways that I want to give you. Having a centralized expert team, enabling multipliers within different areas, and providing automations so that you can truly scale and have a good setup. So with that, thank you for listening.
All right. Thank you very much, Alexandra, for your great insights. So, as already mentioned in the beginning, you, the participants, have the opportunity to raise your questions. You can do so by using the chat window, and we will try to answer them in the best possible way. So we can already take a look if there are questions in the window. So I can already see 2 questions. So the first one is, you mentioned that over time, your center of excellence grew in terms of people to around 40. So how do you organize all these different topics you mentioned with the team size that you have reached by now?
So yeah, as mentioned, we grew a lot in the number of members of our team, but that happened over time. So with the time, we also saw the different areas where we can scale, where we have to adapt, where we want to provide more structure in there. So what we did is over time that we also organized our team with different topics. So we have an agile setup, we have different agile teams, for example, working on enablement and evaluation. We have another team working on governance and operations. We also have a team working on DevSecOps and providing tooling for that. So there we organized ourselves in different agile teams depending on the skill sets that we have. And depending on what we are planning, we also sometimes shift our skill sets in the different agile teams to provide the best output.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So there is another question in the chat, might be a bit too broad, but let me nevertheless read it out loud. So the question is, what is the future of SAP HANA? Or is there maybe anything you can say to that?
There's not much I think I can say about that. I think SAP HANA is the database we are relying on and that will be there for the future, but nothing specific I can mention here.
All right, thank you. So if there are any questions, please feel free to raise them. Please feel free to include them in the chat window. In the meantime, I would like to mention that today's session is actually part of an entire Inside SAP series. So by scanning the QR code, which you can currently see on the screen, you can visit our landing page and watch all past sessions on demand and already register for the upcoming ones. So you can also find the link leading to the landing page with all the sessions in the chat window, as well as in the description of this video. So in the meantime, we have received another question. So the question is, which frameworks do you internally use for application development?
So we have different frameworks that we are using, or also that, let's say, we allow our developers to use, but there we go with the SAP architecture strategy, which is at the moment focusing on the cloud application programming model. So we have this as reference architecture where we say that we highly suggest to use the cloud application programming model where it's applicable. And in other cases, and we can always check on an individual basis what the project based can best make use of, depending on the scenario.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So, as mentioned, if there are any questions left, please include them in the chat. And if there aren't any more questions, I would already like to say a big thank you to today's expert, Alexandra, for the great session, for providing us with your insights and experiences. And also many thanks to the participants for joining. And it would, of course, be great to see you in one of the upcoming sessions. So with that, as there are no additional questions in the chat, I would like to wish you a great day. Many thanks for joining and hopefully see you again soon.